Rory, let's get stuck into this Manchester United situation. Tough game coming up at the weekend for them. A trip to Villa Park is always very, very difficult, particularly given the form that they're in at this moment in time. They're coming into it off the back of a massive high, having defeated Bayern Munich the way that they did. I want to start higher up the chain, though, when it comes to Manchester United, because all the talk is around Erik ten Hag. But is it fair to say that since Ineos have come in, the club, not only has it not gone forwards, but it might have actually gone backwards?
I think it's a question that nobody's asking. Very, very weird, and I'm glad that you've asked it, because when you think about how, say, Richard Arnold was treated when he was at Manchester United, his name was on everyone's lips. His name was in every newspaper column about Manchester United. He was persona non grata at Old Trafford. Manchester United fans were so aware of his contribution or lack of contribution to the cause. And Ineos came in. That was the statement that they wanted. That was the sea change. That was the indicator that Manchester United would change. They would become the club that they once were. The former greatness would be restored. And if we're totally frank, remove all even journalistic nuance here.
Yeah.
Let's just be totally honest, transparent, and say it as it is. They made a total pig's ear of the job, haven't they? Like, they've made a total pig's ear of the job. Like, and I know that people don't want to hear that, and I know that Manchester United fans don't really want to hear that because they like the idea of everything being new now.
Do you not think, though, Rory, like, when things are so bad as they were at points under the Glazers, when you know that you've got an ownership there that is milking the club, that is taking everything out for their own gain and doing all the bad things that the Glazers were, just the idea of something new is so appealing that to the point you don't even consider what's coming next.
That's exactly
what's happened.
That's exactly what's happened. That is exactly it. Basically, the celebration was the end of the Glazer era, rather than actually critiquing what Ineos's plan was going to be, because there was always a not necessarily a red flag, but what Ineos are is a company. They are a company, and therefore the motivation of a company is to try and extract money. It's to profit. What I think some Manchester United fans thought they were going to get, because of Sir Jim Ratcliffe's wealth, the fact that he is the richest person from this country, the fact that he is a tax exile in Monaco, I think they thought they may be getting a benefactor. That isn't it. That isn't what they've done. And yes, they've spent money, and they've appointed people that are apparently best in class at every level. Best in class. Omar Barada, best in class. Jason Wilcox, best in class. Stuart Ripley, no.
But are they? That's the question, because recruitment was a big issue that I had with Manchester United prior to Ineos getting involved on the football side of things. I felt like they gave Erik ten Hag too much control. Now, I do feel like a manager does have to have some input, right? You can't turn up as a manager, say, I'm going to play this style of football, but then not have any say in who the club go out and bring in. I feel like managers and head coaches should have a big say, but their decisions need to be sanity checked. And at Manchester United, when Erik ten Hag woke up one morning and walked into the office and said, I think we should sign Anthony, there should have been someone there that said, I don't think that's the right deal, not for that price. We're not going to do that. There should have been that buffer in between. Ineos come in, are supposedly that buffer, and the signings that they've made this summer, I know it's early days, and so I don't want to draw too many conclusions. But I look at Matthias de Ligt. Do I think he's a top centre-half? Nowhere near it. I look at Joshua Zirkzee up front. Good build-up player. But is he ever going to be that goal scorer that Manchester United need? Probably not. I look at the recruitment, the business that they've done this summer, and I just don't think it's that much better than the business that they've done previously. And so what on earth have Ineos brought to the table?
I agree. I agree. I think these are all really legitimate questions. And when you look at the players that they've brought in, the point of a director of football, the point of an overarching, almost agnostic person who sits at the top of a football club, a sporting director, is so that when you part ways with a manager, or if a manager leaves for whatever reason, continuity.
Yeah.
So you sign players that aren't specifically for a manager. They're just players that you know are very good, who are potentially adaptable. They're players who could be moulded. That hasn't happened at all. And it's got to the stage now where, you're right, they signed Anthony. But do you know what the biggest question mark around the Anthony signing is? Erik ten Hag went and basically signed every player from the Eredivisie that he could find. And Anthony is one of them. One of the worst Premier League signings of all time. Like an actual disaster.
If not the worst.
If not the worst. Total disaster. Mohamed Kudus was there. Like, how is Mohamed Kudus playing for West Ham and not Manchester United? And that's not the only example, by the way. That's just the jewel of the crown. Out of the examples, De Ligt you mentioned. There's no way that they've signed De Ligt because they believe that he's a good player and it's got nothing to do with the pre-existing relationship with Erik ten Hag. It must be linked. And I think that you could easily argue that Harry Maguire is at least as good as Matthias De Ligt. The other centre-half they signed, a pre-existing relationship.
Even Mazraoui, who's come in as a fullback, was at Ajax previously.
Yeah, exactly.
So again, there's all that connection all the time.
So I don't know what's going on, but I think it's going to get to the stage very soon because of the dithering. Like, what you need, you know that they've often said, haven't they? Like, this isn't only exclusive, or isn't a football term at all, in fact. But you know they say that indecision is worse than a bad decision. What Manchester United have done since the summer is indecision because they've persevered with a manager, but they haven't quite. So they didn't give him a new contract. They just triggered a year.
Yeah.
They interviewed other managers and then they decided that he was the right one. They didn't.
They spent this summer, but not as much as they'd spent in previous
Exactly.
years.
Also, they spent this summer with Ten Hag as the guy, but then they're not completely committed to it because they didn't give him a proper contract.
Yeah.
So there's so many examples of this new board getting it wrong. We're going to focus on Ten Hag because we're football people. We like to talk about football, and he's the public face of the football team. But yeah, you're right. The ownership and the direction that Manchester United are in, it's as shoddy in this iteration of Manchester United as it was in the previous era.
Absolutely, completely agree. On the flip side, Aston Villa flying high. That is a club with a plan, whose recruitment has been excellent, who have a very, very competent coach at the helm of it. They should win this one, shouldn't they? And quite comfortably. I wouldn't be surprised if United turned up and conceded 3 or 4 on Sunday. I really wouldn't.
Certainly wouldn't be surprising. It can happen. The only reason, there is a slight reason why I feel like Villa might struggle here, and that is because of the euphoria. One of the best results that Aston Villa have had in decades. I mean, on some level, it was the best result that they've had since they won the European Cup in De Kuip in 1982. Like, genuinely. I know they've won silverware since then, but it was such a statement result off the back of Gary Shaw passing. The Villa Park won't have rocked like that forever. I sometimes think that the euphoria, I think we naturally say that a win should lead to more wins and the feel-good factor. But I sometimes think that the emotional drain of a victory like that, even a drain in a good way, it can be debilitating for a team to go again. You know,
it can be. It can be.
Feels like anticlimactic, maybe.
It can be. I do think, though, regardless of what we've said about Manchester United, they are a club with a big enough name, with good enough players
to make people rate.
For you to kind of go into the game thinking we can't.
It's a proper scalp. Even when it's not a scalp, it's a scalp.
Exactly. Just the name Manchester United represents a scalp. So I feel that might help Villa in a weird way. But we're going to learn a lot about
Manchester United have a great record at Villa Park. But then, look, what we have seen with this Villa team, we've seen them do amazing things, and we don't need to go into it now. But you and I slightly differ on how highly I rate Emery and how I know you acknowledge he's very good. I almost see him as great, but that's for a conversation for another day. They can get it wrong, Villa. Do you remember when they needed to beat Tottenham at the end of last season? They ended up conceding 4. Earlier this season against Arsenal. Like, they can get it wrong. And weirdly, whenever Erik ten Hag has needed a result, backs against the wall, you don't win this game, you are sacked. He does find the result. And on some level, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think Aston Villa are going to drop points here.
It could happen.
Yeah.
It could happen. And the thing with this Manchester United side, and I think the reason people are so frustrated with them, is that when you look among their ranks, there is some match winners in that side. You know, Bruno Fernandes, if he can avoid getting himself sent off, he's capable of winning you a football match. Marcus Rashford, if he decides to turn up, can do it too.
There's not enough of those, though, are there? Like, when you name match winners, like if you just pick almost any other club in the Premier League, and I don't mean the best. I don't mean, like, don't go Man City where you go De Bruyne, Haaland, Silva, like, not that. You know, if you pick even clubs that aren't supposed to be that good and you go match winners,
You'll probably find a few.
You find way more than you do at Manchester United. Like, who's going to win a game for Newcastle? You kind of go, well, Gordon's looking like a match winner. Isak's brilliant.
Joe Linton can pop up with
Barnes
a goal.
is on good foot. You know, there's match winner. You know, when you look at Manchester United and you go, right, Man United, Villa, who's going to win them the game? Who's going to take the game by the scruff of the neck? Demand victory, drag them to the 3 points. Who's it going to be? And you start going, Rashford. And then you kind of think, okay, I haven't seen Rashford do that for ages.
I'll tell you who I think is that, and probably doesn't always get the credit he deserves from the outside world. I think Garnacho. I feel like Garnacho is one of those players that he could be really quiet for 80 minutes, but it's worth having him on the pitch because he is a very clutch player. And he can
but Harry, I don't disagree with you. I think it's a good shout. But the geezer's 20. Like, what I'm talking about is match winners. You know, like the 29-year-old that just goes, lads, you know. But they're in the Villa team.
But isn't that the point, Rory? Like, Manchester United have to decide where they're going. You're either going to have your Garnachos and your Kobe Mainus and you're going to persist with them in the view to building something that is long-term sustainable and is going to work for you, and you accept the pain that you go through while they're developing, while they're growing, or you abandon that and you go and buy ready-made players. And I don't know what their strategy is.
There's a third plan, which is the Manchester United plan of old. You know when people say you don't win anything with kids? That Alan Hansen quote that did him so dirty, it was actually true. You don't win anything with kids. The reason that Manchester United won the league that year and the cup that year wasn't only because of the kids. It was because in the team they had Brian McClare and Eric Cantona and Mark Hughes and Gary Pallister and Steve Bruce. Yeah, of course, you had like a little ginger Paul Scholes flying about who was brand new, and you had like David Beckham, this sort of handsome, weird, spotty kid on the wing, and you had all this other stuff. But the point is that you have both. So yes, you need a Garnacho. Everyone needs a Garnacho, right? A young, prodigious, exciting, unpredictable talent who could end up winning a Ballon d'Or. You need that jeopardy. You need that excitement. But do you know what else you need? You need Michael Ballack at 29. You need Patrick Vieira at 29. You need Roy Keane at 29. And they haven't even got anything close to that. Like, I've given examples of like true geezers, grits, fighters. They haven't even got like a version of that. You know, like Brian McClare was a brilliant player, but he wasn't Roy Keane. They haven't even got a Brian McClare. You know, like, I'm not talking about where's their Bobby Robson. I'm talking about where's their John O'Shea.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. They don't have those players that you look at when you're struggling and think he's the one that's going to drag us through. The only person that you could ever look at times and feel that way is maybe Bruno Fernandes. But then he goes and gets himself sent off or does something silly.
Obviously I mean Brian Robson. You can't put, I'm afraid, and I've done it in myself in the past, I've rated Bruno Fernandes really highly, incorrectly highly. But we just can't put him into that category anymore, Harry. Like, he just isn't that. Like, you know, he's not Nicky Butt. He's not even comparable to anyone like that. He isn't a captain. I think you could argue on some level, you know when Harry Maguire was stripped of the captaincy?
Yeah. I
thought it was a correct decision. But it's an incorrect decision if it goes to Bruno Fernandes. Like, I can't believe how bad.
But the fact that there was a lack of options, the fact that there was the lack of a clear candidate, I think kind of says a lot. And very quickly, because I know we've got a break, when you look at some of the other teams, let's use Arsenal as an example. Bukayo Saka was wearing the armband the other night. You'd happily give it to him.
You've got a team of captains.
You'd give it to Gabriel.
Which is why you can win the league.
You'd give it to Jorginho. You'd give it to Rice.
Mate, when Chelsea were good, we used to have a team of international captains. Like, literally, the whole team were there. They weren't Chelsea captain. John Terry was. But you could be the international captain. Michael Ballack played for Chelsea. He wasn't the captain of Chelsea. He was captain of Germany. Petr Cech played for Chelsea, not the captain, but was captain of the Czech Republic. Branislav Ivanovic. Like, it was literally a team of international captains. And that's what you need. At Manchester United, I'm serious. I don't have a clue who the captain is in that squad. I really don't.
Agree.
Who's the personality? Who's the heartbeat? Who's the man who sets the standards?
No idea. It's definitely not the manager at the minute either.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.